Hey legends, welcome back to History Gone Mad, where the past isn't just weird, it's straight up unhinged tonight. We're pulling back the silk curtains on one of the most scandalous and misunderstood roles in ancient Rome, the life of a prostitute. But before we dive into the gritty details of back alley brothels, elite escorts, and everything in between, hit that button and subscribe only if you're into wild history that schools you and entertains you at the same time. Also, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I love seeing how global this little history cult has gotten. Alright, lights low. Maybe grab a drink or put on a fan for that late night, because tonight you're not just watching history. You're waking up as a working girl in ancient Rome. You open your eyes barely rested inside a cramped, smoky room that smells like sweat, cheap perfume. And last night's regrets, the walls are thin. You can hear moaning from next door, and your legs still ache from yesterday. But you've got no time to complain, because in this city, bodies are currency, and yours is already overdue. You wake up in a cramped stone cell beneath the streets of ancient Rome, circa 150 CE. Air is thick with incense, meant to mask the smell of human misery. Your name is Livia. But that's not the name you were born with. That identity died the day you were sold into slavery at age 14. The wooden token around your neck bears the number 7, marking you as the 7th girl in this particular brothel, this lupaner, where wolves come to feed. Your day begins not with prayer or breakfast, but with inspection. The lanista, the brothel keeper, examines your body for signs of disease, bruises that might discourage customers, or any attempt at self-harm. You've learned to stand perfectly still during this ritual, knowing that any flinch could earn you a beating that would cost you days of work. The economic reality is brutal. Damaged goods don't earn coin. And coin is all that keeps you alive. The other girls shuffle past you in the narrow corridor, their faces bearing the hollow expressions of those who've learned to separate their mind from their bodies. There's Claudia, barely 16, who whispers prayers to Isis in Egyptian when she thinks no one is listening. There's Tertia, who's been here so long she's forgotten her original name, and who teaches the newer girls how to brew contraceptive. Potions from Silphum and pennyroyal knowledge that could mean the difference between survival and death. You begin your morning preparations with the methodical precision of a soldier preparing for battle. First, the application of white lead paint to your face and arms. Toxic cosmetic that will slowly poison you but creates the pale complexion. Roman men desire, then kohl around your eyes, antimony that will gradually damage your vision. The irony isn't lost on you. The very tools meant to make you attractive are slowly killing you. The religious rituals come next. You light a small oil lamp before a tiny shrine to Venus obsequens. Venus the compliant, a goddess who supposedly protects sex workers. The prayer you whisper is not for love or happiness, but for the strength to endure another day without. Losing your sanity, you've seen too many girls break. Seen them carried out in the night, their minds shattered like pottery dropped on stone. Your clothing is deliberately provocative, a thin silk stola that reveals more than it conceals. Jewelry that marks you as available, and shoes with distinctive patterns that leave tracks in the mud, advertising your profession to anyone who knows how to read the signs. Every detail of your appearance is regulated by law. The Emperor Caligula himself decreed that prostitutes must wear certain colors and styles, marking them as clearly as if they were branded livestock. The morning light filters through the narrow windows of the lupaner, casting long shadows across the stone floor. Graffiti covers the walls, crude drawings, price lists, and messages from customers who want their favorite girls to know they'll return. One reads, "Lucilla has a lovely way," while another, more ominous, warns, "Beware the senator's son, he likes to use his fists." As you prepare for the day ahead, you know that survival depends on reading the subtle signs of danger in every customer's eyes. But what you don't yet know is that this particular morning will bring a visitor whose presence will change everything. A man whose identity will force you to confront the most horrifying truth about your profession. What happens when the most powerful man in Rome walks through your door? You count the bronze coins in your small leather pouch, 4 sestertii from yesterday's work. It's barely enough to buy a loaf of bread, but it's more than many free citizens earn a day. The bitter irony of your situation becomes clear as you calculate the mathematics of survival. You generate enormous wealth for others while living in squalor yourself. The lanista takes 60% of your earnings, leaving you with barely enough to purchase food, cosmetics, and the potions that prevent pregnancy. The remaining coins must be saved for your eventual freedom, if you live long enough to buy it. The price of manumission hovers around 2,000 denarii, a sum that would take you 15 years to accumulate if you never spent a single coin on survival. Your customers arrive with specific expectations shaped by centuries of Roman law and custom. A simple encounter costs 2 as the price of a cup of wine. For this pittance, you provide what married Roman women are legally forbidden to offer: oral sex, anal intercourse, and positions that would scandalize respectable society. The Lex Iulia de Adulterius, passed by Augustus himself, created a sexual apartheid that makes your services not just desirable, but necessary. The price list, painted on the wall outside your cell, tells the story of supply and demand written in human flesh. Young girls from Gaul command premium prices. Their exotic blonde hair and blue eyes fascinate Roman men. Greek slaves, educated in the arts of pleasure, cost more than simple laborers. But you, a Roman-born citizen sold into slavery for debt, occupy the middle tier of this flesh market. Your regular customers include Marcus Cornelius, a married senator who visits every 3rd day and pays double the standard rate for the privilege of pretending you're his daughter. There's Gaius the baker, who trades bread for services because he has no coins. Most disturbing is Lucius Maximus, a 15-year-old whose wealthy father pays for his sexual education, a common practice among the elite who want their sons to learn technique before marriage. The brothel operates on a complex hierarchy of exploitation. Above you are the courtesans, the expensive companions who entertain at dinner parties and may eventually earn their freedom through the favor of wealthy patrons. Below you are the streetwalkers, the bustuaria who service customers in graveyards. For a few bronze coins, at the bottom are the noctilucae, the night moths who work the docks and die young from violence and disease. Between customers, you engage in activities that would surprise those who see you only as a vessel for male pleasure. You help newer girls learn to read. Literacy means you can negotiate better prices and avoid being cheated. You teach them to recognize the symptoms of various diseases, to prepare herbal remedies, and to hide small amounts of money from the Lanista's inspections. The other girls share stories of their former lives. Claudia was a potter's daughter. From Alexandria, Tertia worked in her father's bakery in Pompeii. These fragments of identity, carefully preserved like precious gems, remind you that you existed before this place tried to reduce you to nothing more than a commodity. But as the afternoon sun climbs higher, you hear footsteps in the corridor that make your blood freeze. The measured gait, the distinctive sound of expensive leather boots. You know that walk. The last time you heard it, a girl disappeared forever. Who is coming? And why do the other girls suddenly fall silent with terror? You stand at the bottom of Rome's most ruthless social ladder. But even here, cruel hierarchies determine who lives and who dies. The approaching footsteps belong to Dominus Cassius, the most feared brothel owner in the Subura district. His arrival means someone has broken the unspoken rules that keep this underworld functioning. The Roman legal system has created multiple categories of sex workers, each with different rights and restrictions. As a registered meretrix, you have more protection than the illegal prostitutes who work without licenses. You can own property, make contracts, and even testify in court privileges that freeborn women often lack. Yet this legal recognition comes with a price. You must wear the toga, the traditional male garment that marks you as sexually available to any Roman citizen. Above you in the hierarchy are the delicatae, the skilled courtesans who attend dinner parties and may eventually marry their patrons. They learn to play musical instruments, recite poetry, and engage in intellectual discourse. Some become wealthy enough to own their own brothels, employing girls like you. The the most successful, like Cytheris, who became Mark Antony's mistress, achieve a kind of immortality through their influence on powerful men. The Scordom occupy the middle-tier experienced women who work in better establishments and can choose their customers. They've learned to read the subtle signs that separate a generous patron from a violent one. Many have developed specific skills. Flavia specializes in serving older men who can no longer perform with their wives, while Aurelia speaks 5 languages and caters to foreign merchants. Below you are the Lupi, the she-wolves who work the streets and die young. They service customers in doorways, under bridges, and in the ruins of abandoned buildings. Most are foreign slaves or desperate widows with no family support. Their lives are measured in days rather than years, and their deaths rarely merit attention from the authorities. At the very bottom are the bustuaria, who work among the tombs outside the city walls. These women are often disfigured by disease or violence, serving the poorest customers in places where the dead outnumber the living. They're considered so polluted that even other sex workers avoid them, as if their degradation might be contagious. Your daily routine involves navigating these hierarchies with the skill of a diplomat. You show deference to the delicatesse while offering guidance to newer girls. You share information about dangerous customers, teaching survival skills that no Roman school would ever include in its curriculum. When Claudia contracts a fever, you pool your resources with the other girls to buy medicine, knowing that her death would diminish all of your chances of survival. The religious implications of your profession create another layer of complexity. You're forbidden from participating in most religious festivals, yet you maintain your own spiritual practices. The shrine to Venus in your cell contains offerings from customers who believe sexual release brings divine favor. Some girls worship Isis, whose mystery cult promises redemption even for the most despised members of society. But Dominus Cassius's arrival signals something more sinister than routine business. His expression carries the cold satisfaction of a predator who has cornered his prey. The other girls press themselves against the walls, trying to become invisible. What crime has been committed, and who will pay the ultimate price? You've learned to read men's faces like a prophet reads omens, decoding the subtle signs that predict violence or generosity. The Roman men who visit your brothel arrive carrying the weight of their own frustrations, their sexual desires twisted by a culture that sees women as property and slaves as less than human. Marcus Brutus, not the famous assassin, but a grain merchant who shares the name visits every Tuesday at the 3rd hour. He pays in advance and speaks to you in Greek, pretending you're educated Hetaira from Athens rather than a slave from the Subura. His fantasy requires you to discuss philosophy while he undresses, to quote Sappho while he takes his pleasure. The irony cuts deep. He craves intelligence in a woman while supporting a system that denies women education. Then there's Gaius Valerius, a veteran of the Germanic campaigns who bears scars from barbarian weapons. He pays double the standard rate but never touches you. Instead, he sits on the edge of your bed and describes the horrors he witnessed in the forests of Germania, the screams of dying comrades, the smell of burning villages, the weight of decisions that haunt his dreams. You've become his confessor, the only person who will listen to his guilt without judgment. The most disturbing regular is Lucius Cornelius, a respected senator who brings his teenage son for sexual education. Roman law encouraged fathers to teach their sons about pleasure using slaves and prostitutes, ensuring they won't embarrass themselves on their wedding nights. You're forced to instruct the boy in techniques his future wife will never experience, creating a cycle of sexual dysfunction that passes from generation to generation. Your customers. Requests reveal the hidden pathologies of Roman society. Wealthy matrons, frustrated by loveless marriages, sometimes visit dressed as men. They pay premium prices for the emotional intimacy their husbands never provide. These clandestine encounters violate every social norm, yet they happen with surprising frequency. The religious dimension of your work emerges in unexpected ways. Some customers believe that sexual release before important business ventures will bring divine favor. Others see you as a conduit to the gods, whispering prayers during climax as if your body were a temple. The festival of Floralia transforms your brothel into a religious site, with men paying to honor the goddess of flowers through acts there. Wives would consider abominable. Your survival depends on maintaining detailed mental records of each customer's preferences. Fears and dangerous tendencies. Senator Cassius becomes violent when drunk on Florian wine. The young aristocrat Octavius pays extra for the privilege of calling you by his mother's name. The foreign merchant Hanno speaks only Punic but tips generously if you pretend to understand his stories about Carthage. Between customers, you share intelligence with the other girls. Information about violent patrons, generous tippers, and men who might help you achieve freedom circulates through. The brothel-like battlefield intelligence. This knowledge network often means the difference between survival and death. But as evening approaches, you notice unusual activity in the brothel. Galanista speaks in hushed tones with men wearing the distinctive cloaks of the Praetorian Guard. Their presence can only mean one thing. Someone very important has taken an interest in your establishment. What happens when the Emperor's own guards arrive asking questions about your customers? You've developed a complex system of daily rituals that keep you alive in a world designed to destroy you. These practices, unknown to your customers, represent the difference between maintaining your sanity and joining the broken girls who rock themselves to sleep while whispering to invisible friends. Each morning begins with the application of cherusa, the white lead paint that gives you the pale complexion Roman men desire. You know it's slowly poisoning you, your gums have begun to recede, and your hands sometimes shake uncontrollably. But appearing without makeup would mean losing customers. And losing customers means starvation. You've calculated that the poison will kill you in perhaps 10 years, while poverty would kill you in 10 days. Your cosmetic routine includes antimony for your eyes, ochre for your cheeks, and henna for your hair. These substances, imported from Egypt and Gaul at enormous expense, mark you as a commodity worth maintaining. The Lanista provides them not from kindness, but from economic necessity damaged goods. Don't generate profit. The religious rituals you perform would shock respectable Romans. You maintain a small shrine to Venus Obsequens, the goddess of sexual submission, but you also worship Isis, whose mystery cult promises redemption for even the most despised members of society. The prayers you whisper are not for love or happiness, but for the strength to survive another day without losing your mind. Your dietary practices reflect both desperation and cunning. You eat sparingly, knowing that hunger dulls the senses and makes the work more bearable. But you also consume specific herbs and compounds designed to prevent pregnancy and disease. Silphium, worth more than its weight in gold, provides the most effective contraception. When you can't afford it, you rely on combinations of pennyroyal, juniper berries, and iron sulfate, a dangerous mixture that sometimes kills as surely as childbirth would. The mental techniques you've developed would impress the Stoic philosophers who preach emotional detachment. You've learned to separate your consciousness from your body, to exist in a mental space where the physical violations can't reach. Some girls achieve this through wine or opium, but you've chosen the more difficult path of conscious dissociation. Your network of relationships within the brothel operates like a secret society. You and the other girls share information, resources, and emotional support in ways that would be impossible in respectable society. When Claudia falls ill, you contribute to her medical care. When Tertia hoards coins for her freedom, you cover her share of communal expenses. This cooperation exists in defiance of the competitive system designed to pit you against each other. The literacy skills you've acquired in secret give you advantages the Lanista doesn't suspect. You can read the graffiti customers leave on the walls, learning about their plans and preferences. You understand the contracts that govern your enslavement, spotting clauses that might offer paths to freedom. Most importantly, you can write letters to contacts outside the brothel, maintaining connections that might eventually save your life. But tonight, something disrupts your carefully constructed routine. The Praetorian guards have been asking questions about a particular customer, a man whose identity could destroy powerful families if revealed. The other girls avoid eye contact. But, they're thinking the same thing. What happens when your carefully guarded secrets become matters of imperial security? You wake to find Claudia burning with fever, her skin erupting in pustules that mark the arrival of Rome's most feared enemy, the plague. But this isn't the disease that will later devastate the empire under Marcus Aurelius. This is something different, something that specifically targets the women who work in your profession. The physicians call it morbus imputicus, the shameful disease. Though you know it by its symptoms: burning pain during urination, discharge that smells like rotting fish, and eventual blindness if left untreated. The Greek physician Serenus has written about it in his medical texts, describing how it spreads through sexual contact and destroys the reproductive organs of women while leaving men largely unaffected. Your daily routine now includes the terrifying ritual of self-examination. You check your body for the telltale signs, the small, painless sores that appear first, followed by the rash that spreads across your torso. The other girls perform the same inspections, knowing that discovery means exile to the pest house outside the city walls, where the infected wait to die. The economic impact of disease in your profession creates a vicious cycle. Sick girls can't work, which means they can't afford the expensive treatments that might save them. The Lanista maintains a small medical fund, but it's reserved for his most profitable workers. The rest face a brutal choice: continue working while infected, spreading the disease to customers and other girls, or starve in quarantine. You've learned to prepare primitive medicines from the herbs that grow wild in the ruins of abandoned buildings. Wormwood tea helps reduce fever, while poultices made from honey and wine can slow the spread of skin lesions, the most valuable. Treatment is mercury, imported from Spain at enormous cost. It actually works against some symptoms. But the cure is almost as deadly as the disease mercury poisoning causes: madness, tooth loss, and eventual death. The religious implications of disease in your profession reflect Roman beliefs about moral contamination. Many citizens believe that sex workers are cursed by the gods, that their diseases represent divine punishment for violating natural law. This belief system justifies the cruel treatment you receive while absolving customers of responsibility for spreading infection. Your survival network adapts to the threat of disease in ways that would impress military strategists. The girls share information about which customers show symptoms, creating an early warning system that helps prevent outbreaks. When someone falls ill, the others pool resources to purchase medicine, knowing that an epidemic would destroy the entire brothel. The most haunting aspect of disease in your world is how it reveals the true nature of your relationships. Customers who claim to care about you disappear the moment they suspect infection. The Lanista, who profits from your body, shows genuine concern only when your illness threatens his investment. But the other girls, who have nothing to gain from your recovery, risk their own health to care for you. Tonight, as Claudia's fever breaks and her breathing stabilizes, you realize that survival in this place requires more than just enduring the physical violations. You must navigate a complex web of disease, medicine, and human relationships while maintaining the illusion that you're nothing more than a vessel for male pleasure. But morning brings news that will change everything. A customer has died, and the circumstances of his death point to murder. Who killed him? And why do the authorities suspect someone in your brothel? You overhear a conversation that could topple the government. Senator Marcus Crassus, not the famous general, but his ambitious nephew, whispers state secrets while lying in Tertia's bed, believing that slaves can't understand the implications of political conspiracy. He's planning to overthrow the current Caesar's tax policies through carefully orchestrated riots in the Forum. The brothel where you work serves as an unofficial intelligence center for Rome's political elite, men who guard their words carefully. in public become reckless when they believe they're speaking to women who don't matter. You've learned that the current grain shortage is artificial, created by wealthy merchants who want to force small farmers into bankruptcy. You know which senators are secretly Christian and which military commanders are selling weapons to Germanic tribes. Your customers include men from every level of Roman society, and their pillow talk reveals the empire's hidden fault lines. Syrian merchant Apollodorus describes how eastern provinces are planning to declare independence if the tax burden increases. The young aristocrat Gaius Marius boasts about bribing election officials to ensure his father's victory in the upcoming consular elections. The German freedman Hans speaks of growing unrest among the barbarian auxiliaries who feel cheated of their promised land grants. The political implications of your profession extend beyond mere gossip. Roman law requires that prostitutes be registered and taxed, making you part of the state's revenue system. Your activities are monitored by government officials who track your earnings, your customers, and your health status. This bureaucratic oversight creates a paper trail that could embarrass powerful men if it ever became public. The religious dimension of politics affects your daily life in unexpected ways. The current emperor has declared himself a god, requiring that all citizens participate in imperial worship. As a registered prostitute, you're exempt from certain religious obligations, but required to attend special ceremonies where you publicly acknowledge your low status. These rituals serve to remind the population that some people exist outside the protection of traditional Roman values. Your survival depends on maintaining political neutrality while secretly gathering information that might someday purchase your freedom. You've learned to appear ignorant while memorizing every detail of your customers' conversations. The intelligence you've accumulated could destroy careers, end marriages, and possibly prevent a civil war if you could find a way to use it without being killed. The other girls have developed their own political strategies. Claudia maintains correspondence with contacts in Alexandria, feeding them information about Roman military plans in exchange for gold coins. Tertia has seduced a young scribe from the imperial archives, gaining access to government documents that reveal corruption in the grain distribution system. These activities violate numerous laws, but they also represent the only path to eventual freedom. Tonight, the political tensions in your brothel reach a breaking point. Senator Crassus arrives with blood on his toga and terror in his eyes. He's willing to pay any price for silence about something that happened in the Senate House. The other girls scatter like startled birds, but you remain, knowing that this moment could change everything. What secret is worth more than your life? And who else knows what Senator Crassus has done? You discover a newborn infant abandoned in the alley behind your brothel, wrapped in a blood-stained cloth that bears the distinctive embroidery of a senatorial family. The child's presence forces you to confront the most heartbreaking reality of your profession, the unwanted children who result from encounters that Roman law refuses to acknowledge. The baby's mother was almost certainly one of your colleagues, a girl who managed to conceal her pregnancy until the very end. Roman law permits infanticide for unwanted children, especially those born to slaves, but the practice creates a moral burden that haunts even the most hardened sex workers. You've watched girls give birth in silence, then carry their babies to the cliffs outside the city, where exposure to the elements provides a supposedly merciful death. Your own experience with pregnancy ended differently, but no less tragically. 3 years ago, you carried a child for 7 months before a customer's violent assault caused a miscarriage. The fetus was large enough to show its father's features, the distinctive nose of Senator Cassius. One of your regular clients, the Lanista, showed no concern for your physical suffering, only anger at the lost income during your recovery. The economics of pregnancy in your profession create impossible choices. Pregnant prostitutes can't work, which means they can't afford food or shelter. The herbs and potions that prevent conception are expensive and dangerous, sometimes causing death even when properly prepared. The alternative, carrying unwanted children to term, usually results in either infanticide or abandonment, creating a cycle of suffering that extends beyond the brothel walls. You've learned to prepare the sylphin-based contraceptives that are worth more than their weight in gold. The plant grows only in Cyrenaica, and Roman demand has driven it nearly to extinction. When you can't afford sylphy, you rely on pennyroyal, juniper berries, and iron sulfate, a dangerous combination that sometimes kills the mother along with the unwanted fetus. The religious implications of pregnancy and infanticide divide your community. Some girls worship Isis, whose mystery cult promises redemption. For even the most desperate acts, others follow Cybele, the Great Mother, who supposedly protects women during childbirth. But these divine promises provide little comfort when faced with the practical reality of feeding an unwanted child in a world that offers no mercy to the powerless. The abandoned children who survive often become part of Rome's underworld. Boys may be trained as gladiators or criminals, while girls frequently end up in brothels like yours. Continuing the cycle of exploitation, you've seen women discover that their new colleagues are the daughters they abandoned years earlier, creating moments of recognition that shatter whatever emotional defenses they've managed to construct. Tonight, as you hold the abandoned infant, you face a choice that will define the rest of your life. You could expose the child as Roman law permits, ending its suffering before it truly begins. You could try to find a family willing to adopt, though few respectable Romans would accept a child of such questionable parentage. Or you could attempt to keep the baby, knowing that this decision would probably cost you your own life. What do you choose when every option leads to tragedy? And why do the other girls look at you with such desperate hope? You've discovered a secret society that operates beneath Rome's streets, a network of escaped slaves, former gladiators, and sex workers who found ways to survive outside the imperial system. Tonight, Claudia reveals that she's been passing information to this underground organization, using her position in the brothel to gather intelligence about Roman military movements. The network operates through a system of coded messages hidden in plain sight. The graffiti on your brothel walls contains information about safe houses, sympathetic citizens, and escape routes that lead beyond the empire's borders. What appear to be crude sexual boasts actually encode details about patrol schedules, guard rotations, and the movements of officials who might be bribed or blackmailed. Your daily routine now includes activities that would be considered treason if discovered. You memorize the conversations of military officers who visit your brothel, noting their discussions of troop deployments, supply problems, and weaknesses in Rome's border defenses. This information travels through the underground network to Germanic tribes, Gallic resistance leaders, and other groups planning attacks on Roman territory. The religious dimension of the network draws from mystery cults that promise liberation from earthly suffering, followers of Isis Mithras, and the crucified Jewish prophet share certain beliefs about the equality of all souls before their gods. These theological concepts provide intellectual justification for activities that Roman law considers criminal, creating a spiritual framework for resistance. Your survival skills have evolved beyond the simple techniques needed for your profession. You will learn to read and write in multiple languages, to forge documents, to prepare poisons, and to treat wounds. The network provides education that no Roman school would offer to a woman, especially not to a slave. This knowledge transforms you from a mere victim into someone capable of fighting back. The economic aspects of the network reveal how exploitation creates its own opposition. Money flows through the underground organization in ways that would puzzle. Roman merchants, former slaves support current ones. Freed gladiators purchase weapons for escape attempts, and successful fugitives send gold back to help others achieve freedom. This parallel economy operates on principles of mutual aid rather than profit maximization. The other girls in your brothel represent different levels of involvement in the network. Tertia serves as a courier, carrying messages between safe houses. Disguised as routine errands, Claudia provides medical care to injured fugitives, using skills learned from treating customers' diseases. Even girls who aren't actively involved contribute by remaining silent about activities they witness. Tonight, the network faces its greatest test. Roman authorities have discovered evidence of the underground organization, and are conducting systematic raids throughout the Subura district. The Lanista has been arrested, and Praetorian guards are searching every building for signs of seditious activity. The coded messages on your walls suddenly represent deadly evidence that could lead to crucifixion. Claudia presses a small leather pouch into your hands. It contains enough gold to purchase your freedom or fund an escape attempt. She whispers an address where you can find sanctuary, but reaching it would require crossing the city while avoiding patrols that shoot runaway. Slaves on site? What price are you willing to pay for freedom, and who else will you save or sacrifice in the attempt? You recognize the man standing in your doorway, despite the common clothes and false beard. The purple stripe hidden beneath his tunic, the distinctive ring bearing the imperial seal, and the way the Praetorian guards position themselves in the corridor confirm what you already suspected. Emperor Antoninus Pius himself has come to your brothel, and his presence here could reshape the empire. The emperor's visit isn't driven by simple lust. He's investigating reports of a conspiracy that threatens his rule, and the trail has led him to your establishment. Senator Crassus, who died mysteriously 3 days ago, was planning to use information gathered from brothel customers to blackmail half the Roman Senate. The emperor believes that someone in your building knows the details of this plot. Your training in reading powerful men's emotions serves you well as you observe the emperor's behavior. He's genuinely frightened, not of physical danger, but of political exposure. The conspiracy apparently involves members of his own family, trusted advisors who've been selling state secrets to foreign enemies. The information that passes through your brothel could determine whether the empire survives or collapses into civil war. The religious implications of the emperor's presence create a theological crisis for your community. As a registered prostitute, you're considered religiously impure, unfit to be in the presence of a man who claims divine status. Yet here he stands, proving that even gods need information that only the most despised members of society can provide. The emperor's questions reveal the true extent of the conspiracy. He wants to know which senators visited your brothel, what they discussed, and whether any of them mentioned plans to assassinate him. The information you've gathered through months of careful observation suddenly becomes a matter of imperial security, potentially worth more than your freedom. Your survival instincts warn you that this conversation could end with your death, regardless of what you reveal. If you provide the information the emperor seeks, you become a witness who knows too much. If you refuse to cooperate, you face immediate execution for treason. The only path to survival requires the kind of strategic thinking that no Roman school teaches to women. The other girls have vanished into the shadows, leaving you alone with the most powerful man in the world. His bodyguards block every exit, their hands resting on sword hilts as they watch for any sign of treachery. The emperor's eyes hold the cold calculation of a man who has ordered thousands of executions without losing sleep. You realize that this moment represents the culmination of everything you've learned about survival in Rome's underworld. The intelligence you've gathered, the political connections you've mapped, the underground network you've helped build, all of it has led to this confrontation with ultimate power. The emperor leans forward, his voice barely above a whisper as he asks the question that will determine your fate. What did Senator Crassus tell you about the Ides of Julius? And who else knows about the gold that was supposed to reach the Germanic tribes? How do you answer when the truth could save or destroy the empire and your life depends on choosing correctly? You stand before the rebel council as they debate the emperor's offer, knowing that your recommendation will determine the fate of millions. The weight of this responsibility would have crushed the frightened slave girl you once were, but you've been transformed by years of survival, intelligence gathering, and strategic thinking. Your voice carries the authority of someone who has earned the right to speak for the powerless. The council's deliberations reveal the complex motivations that drive revolutionary movements. Spartacus argues for total war, believing that compromise will only delay the inevitable return of oppression. Marcus Flavius supports negotiation, convinced that legal reform offers more hope than military victory. The The Egyptian agents whisper about the opportunities that continued chaos would create for their queen's ambitions. Your analysis of the situation draws from everything you've learned about power, politics, and human nature. The emperor's offer represents genuine fear rather than calculated deception. He's witnessed the collapse of his authority and understands that his survival depends on radical concessions. But the structural forces that created the imperial system won't disappear simply because one ruler promises reform. The religious dimension of the decision creates its own pressures. The mystery cults that supported the rebellion promised divine favor for those who complete the work of liberation. But other religious traditions warn against the hubris of trying to remake the social order according to human desires. The gods who supposedly favored the revolution may not support the compromises necessary for lasting change. Your recommendation to the council reflects the hard-won wisdom of someone who has survived. By understanding the difference between idealistic dreams and practical possibilities, you argue for accepting the emperor's offer while maintaining the organizational structures that made the rebellion possible. Reform through negotiation, backed by the implicit threat of renewed violence, offers the best chance of creating sustainable change. The debate continues through the night as fires burn throughout the city, and reports arrive about the rebellion's progress in other provinces. The uprising has spread beyond Rome, with slave revolts erupting in Sicily, Gaul, and Egypt. The emperor's offer of reforms may be genuine, but his ability to implement them depends on maintaining enough authority to govern the empire. Your survival network adapts to the changing circumstances with the flexibility that has kept you alive through years of oppression. The intelligence systems you helped build become communication networks for coordinating the transition from rebellion to negotiation. The safe houses that sheltered fugitives become meeting places for planning the new social order. The economic implications of the proposed reforms create their own challenges. Abolishing slavery would require new labor systems, new forms of compensation, and new methods of organizing production. The wealth that funded the rebellion came from Egyptian sources that may not support the compromises necessary for peaceful change. The underground economy that sustained the resistance must be integrated into legitimate commerce. As dawn approaches, the council reaches a decision that will reshape the ancient world. Your recommendation has been accepted, but the real work of revolution is just beginning. The skills you've developed in surviving oppression must now be applied to the more complex task of building a just society. The emperor waits for your answer, Rome burns around you, and the future of human civilization hangs in the balance. What legacy will you leave when the smoke clears and the world must be rebuilt? You're summoned to the imperial palace as Rome burns around you. The emperor, abandoned by his guards and facing certain death, has one final card to play. He offers you and the other rebellion leaders a deal that could reshape the empire forever. In exchange for ending the uprising, he promises to abolish slavery, grant citizenship to all residents of the empire, and establish legal protections for women and workers. The emperor's desperation reveals the true extent of his isolation. The Senate has fled the city, the Praetorian Guard has joined the rebellion, and even his own family has abandoned him. His offer of radical reform represents either genuine conversion or calculated manipulation. You must decide which interpretation will determine your response. Your position as a negotiator between the emperor and the rebels puts you at the center of discussions that will determine the future of the Western world. The skills you've developed in reading powerful men's emotions, the intelligence you've gathered about political conspiracies, and the networks you've built all become crucial assets in negotiations that could prevent or guarantee the empire's collapse. The religious implications of the emperor's offer create their own complications. His promise to abolish slavery directly contradicts Roman religious law, which considers the institution divinely ordained. The mystery cults that supported the rebellion must now decide whether their gods favor gradual reform or violent revolution. This theological debate could determine whether the uprising continues or ends in compromise. The other rebellion leaders respond to the emperor's offer with suspicion and division. Spartacus wants to continue fighting until every symbol of Roman authority is destroyed. Marcus Flavius advocates for accepting the deal, believing that legal reform is more valuable than military victory. The Egyptian agents push for continued chaos, knowing that civil war would serve their queen's interests. Your analysis of the emperor's offer reveals both its potential and its limitations. The promised reforms would improve conditions for millions of people, but they would also preserve the basic structure of imperial authority. The question becomes whether gradual change through legal means is preferable to the uncertain outcomes of violent revolution. The negotiation process forces you to confront the contradictions in your own motivations. You began this journey seeking personal survival and eventually found yourself fighting for universal freedom. Now you must decide whether the emperor's reforms represent genuine progress or a clever trap designed to preserve the system that oppressed you. The economic implications of the proposed reforms create their own pressures. Abolishing slavery would transform the empire's labor system, potentially causing economic disruption that could lead to famine and social collapse. The wealthy citizens who finance the empire's operations would likely resist changes that threaten their prosperity, possibly triggering new forms of conflict. As you prepare to deliver your recommendation to the rebel council, you realize that your decision will affect not just your own fate, but the lives of millions of people throughout the empire. The intelligence network you helped build, the alliances you forged, and the trust you've earned all contribute to the weight of your voice in these discussions. The emperor waits in his palace, surrounded by the ruins of his authority, while the city burns and the rebels debate. Your choice will determine whether the empire dies in flames or transforms into something unprecedented in human history. What price are you willing to pay for the chance to reshape the world? You watch from the brothel's roof as Rome burns. Spartacus's rebellion has begun with coordinated attacks on the Praetorian barracks. The imperial granaries and the Senate House, the orange glow of fires reflects off the low-hanging clouds, and the screams of the dying echo through the narrow streets of the Suburra. You've helped start a revolution that could destroy the empire. The assault on the Praetorian barracks succeeds beyond anyone's expectations. Marcus Flavius, the guard, who became your reluctant ally, has opened the gates from the inside, allowing the rebels to capture the armory and seize control of the emperor's personal guard. The weapons you helped distribute through the underground network have found their targets with deadly precision. Your role in the rebellion transforms you from observer to participant as you coordinate communications between the various attack groups. The intelligence network you help build becomes a military command system, with messages flowing through the brothel district to coordinate the timing of strikes throughout the city. Your survival skills have evolved into leadership abilities that you never knew you possessed. The religious dimension of the rebellion creates its own momentum as news of the uprising spreads through Rome's slave population. The mystery cults you've followed in secret emerge into the open, with their promises of divine liberation inspiring thousands of people to join the revolt. The gods who supposedly favored the powerful seem to have abandoned them in their hour of greatest need. The emperor's response reveals the paranoia that has consumed his reign. Instead of organizing a coordinated defense, he locks himself in his palace and orders the execution of anyone suspected of disloyalty. This panic accelerates the rebellion's success by eliminating many of the competent officials who might have contained the uprising. Senator Crassus's intelligence about the Egyptian conspiracy becomes crucial as the rebellion spreads the evidence. He gathered reveals that Cleopatra Selene's agents have been preparing for this moment for years, positioning themselves to exploit the chaos and advance their own agenda. The rebellion you thought was about freedom is actually about replacing one form of oppression with another. Your survival depends on navigating the complex loyalties that emerge during the chaos. The underground network fractures as different factions pursue their own objectives. Some rebels want to establish a new form of government that includes rights for slaves and women. Others seek simple revenge against their oppressors. The Egyptian agents want to create enough chaos to trigger a war that would allow their country to reclaim her throne. The economic implications of the rebellion create their own dynamics. The disruption of trade, the destruction of property, and the flight of wealthy citizens threatened to bankrupt the empire even if the political system survives. The rebellion's success depends not just on military victory, but on creating a sustainable alternative to the Roman economic system. As dawn breaks over the burning city, you realize that you've become one of the architects of Rome's potential destruction. The choices you've made, the intelligence you've gathered, and the networks you've built have all contributed to this moment of revolutionary violence. But victory in battle doesn't guarantee victory in the larger war, and you're about to discover that some enemies are more dangerous than others. What happens when the rebellion succeeds but the revolutionaries discover they've been serving foreign masters? You hear the distinctive sound of hobnailed boots in the corridor and recognize the gait of someone trained in the gladiatorial schools. Spartacus, not the famous rebel, but a man who took that name to honor the legend, has returned to Rome after 3 years of leading escaped slaves in the mountains. His presence in your brothel signals that the underground network's final gambit is about to begin. Spartacus greets you with the wary respect of someone who understands that survival requires constant vigilance. His body bears the scars of countless battles, both in the arena and in the wilderness, where he's been building an army of Rome's discarded people. The gladiator's return means that the time for hiding is over. The network is preparing for open rebellion. The timing of his arrival coincides with the exposure of the Egyptian conspiracy in ways that can't be coincidental. Spartacus reveals that Cleopatra Selene's agents have been funding the underground network, providing weapons and gold in exchange for intelligence about Roman military weaknesses. The rebellion you thought was about freedom was actually about serving foreign interests that care nothing for your survival. Your relationship with Spartacus began years ago, when he was still fighting in the Colosseum. You treated his wounds. After particularly brutal contests, and he shared his dreams of escape with you during the brief moments when gladiators were allowed to visit brothels. His transformation from entertainment to revolutionary leader represents the path you've been unconsciously following. The religious dimension of Spartacus's rebellion draws from mystery cults that promise liberation from earthly suffering. His followers worship gods who favor the oppressed over the powerful, creating a theological framework that justifies violence against Roman authority. This spiritual revolution accompanies the political one, offering hope to people who have been taught that their suffering is divinely ordained. The gladiator's strategic plan reveals the military training that separates him from ordinary rebels. He's not planning random violence, but a coordinated campaign designed to capture key strategic points throughout the empire. The intelligence gathered through your brothel network has identified weaknesses in Rome's defenses that could be exploited by a small but disciplined force. Your survival skills have evolved to match the escalating stakes of the conflict. You've learned to fight with weapons, to read military signals, and to coordinate complex operations while maintaining the appearance of helpless servitude. The transformation from victim to warrior becomes complete as you realize that your fate depends on the success of the rebellion. The economic implications of the gladiators' return create their own pressures. The underground network has invested everything in this final gambit. If the rebellion fails, everyone involved will face crucifixion. The Egyptian gold that funded the operation comes with strings attached. Cleopatra Selene expects the rebels to destabilize Rome's eastern provinces, potentially triggering a civil war that would allow her to reclaim Egypt. As Spartacus prepares his followers for the assault on the Praetorian barracks, you face the choice that will define the rest of your life. You can participate in the rebellion and risk everything for a chance at freedom, or you can try to warn the authorities and hope for mercy from a system that has shown you none. What happens when the moment of truth arrives and you must choose between survival and revolution? You're hiding in the brothel's secret passages when Senator Marcus Crassus, the man you thought was dead, stumbles through the back entrance, wounded and desperate. His death was an elaborate deception designed to flush out the Egyptian conspiracy. And now he needs your help to complete his investigation. The blood on his toga is real, but it belongs to the assassin who tried to kill him. Crassus reveals that he's been working as a double agent for the emperor, pretending to participate in the Egyptian conspiracy while actually gathering evidence to expose it. His visits to your brothel weren't for pleasure, but for intelligence gathering. He needed to monitor the information flowing through Claudia's network without alerting her handlers to his true purpose. The senator's confession transforms your understanding of everything that has happened. The grain speculation he discussed wasn't criminal profiteering, but a cover story designed to explain his suspicious behavior. The Germanic gold he mentioned was actually Egyptian gold. Payment for intelligence that would help Cleopatra Selene's agents sabotage Roman military operations in the East. Your lie to the emperor suddenly takes on new significance. By misdirecting his investigation toward grain merchants, you inadvertently protected Crassus's cover while giving the Egyptian network time to evacuate their compromised operatives. Your deception served the empire's interests better than the truth would have. Though you couldn't have known it at the time, the religious implications of Crassus's deception create their own moral complexities. He's been living a lie for months, violating oaths of loyalty to the Senate, while secretly serving the emperor. His spiritual contamination from contact with prostitutes was part of his cover, a calculated sacrifice of personal honor for the greater good of the empire. The senator's wounds tell the story of his narrow escape from the Egyptian networks. Cleanup operation. The same assassin who killed Claudia was sent to eliminate him. But his military training and paranoid precautions allowed him to survive the attack. His presence in your brothel means that the killers are still hunting him, and your building has become a battlefield. Your survival skills prove crucial as you help Crassus treat his injuries while avoiding the search parties that comb the Spura. District. The knowledge you've gained about herbal medicine, wound care, and hiding places allows you to keep him alive long enough to complete his mission. Your transformation from victim to ally becomes complete as you realize that your fate is now tied to his. The economic dimensions of the conspiracy become clearer as Crassus explains the Egyptian network's true objectives. They weren't just gathering intelligence, but actively sabotaging Rome's financial system by manipulating grain prices, disrupting trade routes, and spreading panic among merchants. The resulting economic chaos would force the emperor to recall troops from Egypt, creating the opportunity for Cleopatra Selene's restoration. As dawn approaches, Crassus prepares to make his final move against the Egyptian conspiracy. He has enough evidence to expose the entire network, but doing so requires reaching the emperor with information that could prevent a war. Your role in this mission will determine whether you remain a victim of history or become one of its architects. What price are you willing to pay to help save the empire that has treated you as less than human? You decipher Claudia's secret correspondence and discover that she was working for Cleopatra Selene, the last surviving member of the Ptolemaic dynasty, who lives in exile in Alexandria. The letters reveal a conspiracy that extends far beyond Rome's borders, a network of Egyptian loyalists working to restore their queen to power by destabilizing the empire from within. The coded messages describe a coordinated campaign of sabotage targeting Rome's grain supply, military communications, and political stability. Claudia's role involved gathering intelligence about senatorial corruption and military weaknesses. Information that could be used to trigger a crisis that would force the emperor to recall troops from Egypt. This revelation transforms your understanding of the conspiracy you've been investigating. Your position in the brothel made you an unwitting participant in this international espionage network. The sexual secrets you've collected, the political conversations you've overheard, and the military intelligence you've gathered were all being transmitted to Alexandria through Claudia's carefully maintained correspondence. Your survival skills accidentally made you one of Egypt's most valuable spies. The religious dimension of the Egyptian conspiracy adds layers of complexity to your situation. Cleopatra Selene claims divine descent from Isis, making her rebellion not just political, but theological. Her supporters believe that Roman rule over Egypt violates the natural order established by the gods, justifying any action that weakens imperial authority. This religious framework provides moral justification for activities that Roman law considers treason. The economic implications of the Egyptian network reveal how ancient grudges drive modern conflicts. The Ptolemaic dynasty lost enormous wealth when Augustus conquered Egypt, and their descendants have spent generations trying to recover their stolen inheritance. The conspiracy involves not just political restoration, but economic revenge. Systematic campaign to bankrupt the Roman treasury by disrupting the grain trade that feeds the empire. Your analysis of Claudia's murder suggests that her death wasn't random violence, but a professional assassination designed to prevent her from revealing the full extent of the Egyptian network. The killer knew about her correspondence, her contacts, and her role in the conspiracy. This knowledge points to someone with access to the highest levels of imperial intelligence, possibly a member of the Praetorian Guard or the emperor's personal staff. The timing of the assassination creates additional mysteries. Claudia was killed just days after the emperor's visit to your brothel, suggesting a connection between his investigation and her death, but the letters indicate that she was already planning to flee Rome, having completed her mission by gathering enough intelligence to trigger the crisis her handlers desired. Your discovery of the Egyptian connection puts you in greater danger than ever before. You now possess information that could expose an international conspiracy, identify foreign agents operating in Rome, and reveal the true extent of the threat. To imperial stability, this knowledge makes you valuable to multiple factions, while ensuring that someone will eventually try to silence you permanently. The underground network you thought you were serving may have been infiltrated or manipulated by the Egyptian conspiracy. Your efforts to help escaped slaves and oppressed women may have actually been serving foreign interests that care nothing. For your survival or freedom, as you burn Claudia's letters to prevent their discovery, you realize that you become a player in a game that extends far beyond the brothel walls. What happens when you discover that your fight for freedom has been serving someone else's empire? You wake to find Claudia's throat cut and a message written in her blood on the stone wall. Traitors die slowly. The underground network you've helped build has been compromised, and someone is systematically eliminating everyone who knows about the emperor's visit to your brothel. Your lie may have saved the empire, but it has also marked you for death. The killer's methods reveal professional training. This isn't random violence, but a calculated campaign of elimination. Claudia's wounds were inflicted with surgical precision, designed to cause maximum suffering while ensuring eventual death. The message suggests that someone knows about the intelligence network and is sending a warning to other potential informants. Your survival now depends on skills that no Roman school teaches to women. How to detect poisons, how to sleep without revealing your location, how to identify potential assassins among your customers. The brothel that once provided relative. Safety has become a killing ground where every shadow might conceal a blade. The religious implications of Claudia's murder create a theological crisis for your community. Her body was mutilated in ways that prevent proper burial rites. Condemning her soul to eternal wandering, this desecration violates even the minimal protections that Roman law provides for slaves, suggesting that your enemy operates outside all moral constraints. The other girls respond to the threat with the survival instincts learned through years of abuse and exploitation. Tesha disappears entirely, probably fled to one of the network's safe houses. The newer girls huddle together, too terrified to work but too poor to leave. The brothel's atmosphere transforms from mere desperation to active terror. Your analysis of the situation reveals disturbing possibilities about the killer's identity. The precision of the attack suggests military training, possibly a current or former member of the Praetorian Guard. The timing indicates someone who knew about the emperor's visit and your role in misdirecting his investigation. The symbolic nature of the murder points to someone with personal knowledge of the underground network. Marcus Flavius becomes your most likely suspect and your only potential ally. His access to the brothel, his knowledge of the conspiracy, and his training in assassination techniques make him the perfect candidate for Claudia's killer. But his expression of genuine shock when he discovers the body suggests either innocence or exceptional acting ability. The economic impact of the Murders extend beyond your personal safety. The brothel's income depends on customers who feel secure enough to visit regularly. News of violent deaths will drive away all but the most desperate clients, creating a financial crisis that threatens everyone's survival. The Lanista, released from custody but now under surveillance, faces bankruptcy if the killing continues. Your investigation of Claudia's murder reveals evidence that challenges your assumptions about the conspiracy. Hidden among her possessions, you find letters written in a cipher that suggest she was working for someone other than the underground network. The decoded messages reveal that she was feeding information to enemies of the Emperor, but not the enemies you expected. As you piece together the truth about Claudia's double life, you realize that your lie to the Emperor may have protected the wrong conspiracy while exposing the right one. Who is Claudia really working for, and why did her true loyalties cost her life? You make a choice that defies every expectation of your station. You lie to the Emperor of Rome with the calculated precision of a master politician. Senator Crassus spoke of gold, Caesar, but not gold for Germanic tribes. He was hiding payment. For Egyptian grain shipments, he feared you would discover his illegal profiteering during the shortage. The lie contains enough truth to be believable while protecting the real conspiracy you've uncovered. Crassus was indeed involved in grain speculation, but his true crime was selling intelligence about Roman military movements to barbarian chieftains. By misdirecting the emperor's attention, you've bought time for the underground network to complete its evacuation of compromised operatives. Your decision to protect Marcus Flavius creates an unspoken alliance that could reshape both your destinies. You catch his subtle nod of acknowledgement. He understands that you've chosen to save his life at enormous personal risk. This moment transforms him from customer to co-conspirator, binding you together in a conspiracy that neither of you fully comprehends. The Emperor's reaction reveals the paranoia that has consumed his reign. He accepts your lie because it confirms his existing suspicions about senatorial corruption while avoiding the more terrifying possibility of military disloyalty. His questions become more specific, focusing on grain merchants and Egyptian contacts rather than the Germanic conspiracy. That actually threatens his rule. Your survival strategy depends on maintaining the delicate balance between revelation and concealment. You provide enough information to satisfy the Emperor's curiosity, while protecting the secrets that could destroy the underground network. Each answer requires split-second calculations about what the Emperor already knows, what he suspects, and what he's prepared to believe. The religious implications of lying to a man who claims divine status create their own theological crisis. Roman law makes it treason to deceive the Emperor, but the mystery cults you follow teach that higher truths sometimes require earthly deceptions. The gods you worship in secret value justice over absolute honesty, providing spiritual justification for your calculated betrayal. The other girls in your brothel have not fled as you initially believed. They're hiding in the building's secret passages. Listening to every word of your conversation with the Emperor, your performance affects not just your own survival, but the fate of every woman who depends on the intelligence network you've helped create. Marcus's role in this deception becomes increasingly complex as the Emperor's questions probe deeper into military matters. The Praetorian Guard's knowledge of palace security, combined with your intelligence about senatorial activities, creates a complete picture of the conspiracy that actually threatens the empire. But revealing this information would expose Marcus's violations while potentially triggering the civil war that all of you are trying to prevent. The economic dimensions of your deception extend beyond personal survival. The underground network has invested enormous resources in creating the escape routes and safe houses that allow people like you to survive outside the imperial system. Your lies protect this investment while buying time for the network to adapt to the new security situation as the Emperor prepares to leave. Apparently satisfied with your misdirection, you realize that you've crossed a line that separates victims from actors in the great game of imperial politics. What price will you pay for daring to deceive a god? And who else knows what you've really done? You notice that Marcus Flavius, the Praetorian Guard standing behind the Emperor, has been one of your regular customers for the past 6 months. His eyes meet yours for just a moment, and you see the panic there. He knows that you could expose his visits to the brothel, destroying his career and possibly his life. This knowledge becomes your most dangerous weapon. The Praetorian Guard's presence in brothels violates multiple military regulations. These elite soldiers swear sacred oaths to remain celibate while on duty, to avoid all contact with slaves and prostitutes, and to maintain the moral purity that their position demands. Marcus has broken every one of these vows, and his violations are documented in the careful records that every brothel must maintain for tax purposes. Your relationship with Marcus began as a simple business transaction, but evolved into something more complex. He visits not just for sexual release, but for emotional support. Sharing his fears about the growing instability in the empire, you've learned that many Praetorian guards are questioning their loyalty to an emperor who seems increasingly paranoid and detached from reality. The religious dimension of Marcus's predicament adds another layer of complexity. The Praetorian Guard participates in sacred rituals that require spiritual purity. His contact with you has rendered him religiously contaminated, unfit to perform the ceremonies that maintain the empire's relationship with the gods. This spiritual pollution could explain the military disasters and economic problems that have plagued recent campaigns. Tonight, as the emperor questions you about Senator Crassus's conspiracy, Marcus faces an impossible choice. He could silence you permanently, ensuring that his secret remains hidden but potentially depriving the emperor of crucial information. He could confess his violations and face execution, but this would eliminate a potential ally at a moment when the empire needs every loyal soldier. Or he could trust you to protect his secret while you navigate the emperor's interrogation. Your survival depends on understanding the political dynamics that swirl around you. The emperor's paranoia has created a climate where any revelation could trigger a purge that destroys innocent and guilty alike. The Praetorian Guard's loyalty is already questionable. Exposing corruption in their ranks could spark a military coup that would make the year of the four emperors look like a minor disturbance. The underground network you've helped build suddenly becomes relevant in ways you never anticipated. Marcus's knowledge of Praetorian Guard procedures, combined with your intelligence about senatorial conspiracies, could provide the information needed to prevent a civil war. But using this knowledge requires trusting a man whose sworn duty is to protect the emperor who's currently threatening your life. The economic implications of your situation create their own pressures. The lanista who owns your brothel pays taxes to the imperial treasury, making your establishment part of the state's financial system. The emperor's investigation could shut down every brothel in Rome, devastating the underground economy that supports thousands of people who have no other means of survival. As the emperor waits for your answer, you realize that Marcus is slowly moving his hand toward his dagger. His loyalty to the emperor wars with his need for self-preservation. And you're caught in the middle of a decision that could determine the fate of the empire. What happens when the guardian of Rome's most sacred oath becomes your most dangerous ally?